I called Zachary's number again, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, the phone ringing once, twice, then straight to that cold robotic voice. "The number you have reached is not in service." I stood there in my kitchen in Arizona, the phone still pressed to my ear, like somehow it would change if I just kept trying, my mind racing, because this wasn't right. Zachary always picked up, or at least texted back, even if it was just a quick "I'm busy, Mom." I tried again. Same message, and that's when the panic set in, not just worry, but this deep gut-twisting fear that something was wrong, really wrong. I opened my texts, scrolled through our last conversation just 3 weeks ago, him telling me about his new job, Jacqueline in the background, laughing about something, and now nothing. I called his work number, no answer, just voicemail. I sent a text. "Zachary, please call me, I'm worried." No response. Hours passed, and by night I was pacing my living room, the Arizona heat sticking to my skin, my phone silent. I called one more time, and this time it didn't even ring, just that same dead-end message. That's when it hit me like a punch to the chest. He blocked me. My own son blocked my number. Before I dive into this story, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and comment with where you're watching from. Your support means everything. I'm Cheryl, 52 years old, living in a small house in Tucson, Arizona, and this is the story of how my world fell apart. 3 months ago, Zachary got married to Jacqueline, a woman he'd been dating for 2 years. I liked her. At first, she was charming, always smiling, brought cookies to our family dinners, made a point to ask about my garden. But there were little things, moments that didn't sit right, like how she'd interrupt Zachary when he was talking to me, or how she'd steer him away if we were having a moment, just the two of us. I brushed it off, told myself I was being overprotective, that I needed to let my son live his life. Zachary was 26, now a grown man with a good job, a new wife, and a future I thought we'd all share. But after the wedding, things changed fast. The calls stopped first, just a slow fade from daily check-ins to once a week, then nothing. Texts went unanswered, or he'd reply with one-word answers. "Fine." "Busy." I figured it was the honeymoon phase, newlyweds, getting caught up in their new life. I didn't want to be that clingy mom, so I gave him space, waited for him to reach out. But then came the call that didn't connect, and the realization that he wasn't just busy, he was gone. I didn't sleep that night, my mind spinning with questions. Was he okay? Was Jacqueline behind this? I went through every memory, every interaction, trying to piece it together. The next morning, I drove to their apartment an hour away, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight, my knuckles were white. I knocked on the door, my heart in my throat, and when Jacqueline opened it, her smile was tight, like she'd been expecting me but wasn't happy about it. "Cheryl, what a surprise," she said, her voice all sugar but her eyes cold. I asked to see Zachary, told her. I'd been trying to reach him, that I was worried. She didn't move, didn't invite me in, just stood there in the doorway. "He's at work," she said. "You know how busy he is?" I pushed past the niceties, asked why his phone wasn't working, why he hadn't called me back. Her smile didn't budge, but she said, "Oh, we got new numbers. I'll make sure he updates you." That was it. No explanation, no apology, just a promise that felt empty. I asked for his new number. She hesitated, then said she'd text it to me later. I left feeling like I'd been dismissed, like I was some stranger, not his mother. When I got home, I waited for that text. It never came. I called her number, it went to voicemail. I sent a message. "Jacqueline, please send me Zachary's number. I need to talk to my son." No reply. That's when I started digging. Went on social media, something I barely used, but I knew Zachary was active on. His profiles were locked down private now, but Jacqueline's was wide open, and what I saw made my stomach turn. Every photo of our family, every picture of Zachary, with me, his dad, his cousins gone, replaced with wedding photos, engagement shots, the two of them smiling in places I didn't recognize. It was like our history had been erased, like I'd been erased. I scrolled until my eyes burned, found a post from a week ago. New life, new love, new everything. with a heart emoji. I felt sick. Not just hurt, but betrayed, like someone had reached into my life and ripped out everything that mattered. I tried calling again, same dead message. I reached out to Zachary's friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years. One of them, a guy named Mike who'd known Zachary since high school, texted back, "I haven't heard from him in months." Jacqueline's got him on a tight leash. That phrase stuck with me, made my blood boil. A tight leash. My son, the boy who used to call me just to talk about his day, who'd drive an hour to fix my leaky faucet, who'd hug me so tight at Christmas, I could barely breathe. I couldn't wrap my head around. It couldn't believe he'd let someone control him like that. But the evidence was piling up, and every piece of it pointed to Jacqueline. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't just sit there. I wrote Zachary a letter, poured my heart into it, told him I loved him, that I was scared, that I didn't understand why he was shutting me out. I mailed it to their apartment, prayed he'd see it before she did. Days passed, no response. I called his work again, finally got through to a receptionist who said Zachary was on a project out of town, but she'd pass along my message. I waited, nothing. That's when I started to feel it. Not just pain, but anger. This burning rage that my own son could let this happen, that Jacqueline could manipulate him like this, that I was losing him, and there was nothing I could do. A week later, I got a text from an unknown number. "Mom, I'm fine. Please stop calling. I need space." I stared at those words, my heart breaking all over again, because they didn't sound like him. Zachary never called me Mom. It was always Mama, and he'd never been cold like that, never told me to stop. I texted back, "Zachary, is this really you? Please just call me. I need to hear your voice." No reply. I called the number, it went straight to voicemail. I was losing my mind, didn't know what to believe anymore. Was it him? Was it her? Pretending to be him? I couldn't stop thinking about it, couldn't stop seeing Jacqueline's fake smile in my head, her voice telling me he was busy, her posts erasing our family. I went back to their apartment this time, unannounced, my heart racing, as I knocked. No answer. I waited an hour, sat in my car across the street, watched the windows for any sign of them. Nothing. I felt like a stalker, like I was crossing some line, but I didn't care. I just wanted my son back. When I got home, I found an email from Jacqueline, short and sharp. "Cheryl, please respect our boundaries. Zachary will reach out when he's ready." Boundaries. What boundaries? I'd been his mother for 26 years, raised him, loved him, sacrificed for him, and now I was supposed to just accept this. I wrote back, told her I wasn't giving up, that I deserved answers, that I deserved to know how much I loved him. She didn't respond. That night, I cried harder than I had in years, not just for Zachary, but for me, for the life we'd had, for the future I thought we'd share. I kept thinking about the wedding, how happy he'd looked, how I'd hugged him and told him I was so proud. I thought about Jacqueline's smile that day, how it seemed real, then how I'd missed all the signs. I felt like a failure, like I'd let this happen somehow. But the anger came back stronger, then the sadness pushed me to keep fighting. I wasn't going to let her win, wasn't going to let her take my son away. I started planning, reached out to a lawyer to see if there was anything I could do legally. Looked up, private investigators, thought about confronting Jacqueline face to face. I didn't know what would work, but I knew I couldn't stop. Not now, not ever. The next morning, I woke up with a fire in my chest, no more tears, just this burning need to get answers, to get Zachary back. I called the lawyer again, a guy named Tom, who specialized in family disputes, told him everything about the blocked number, the deleted photos, Jacqueline's email. He listened patiently, then said there wasn't much I could do legally. Zachary was an adult. He had the right to cut contact if he wanted. Those words hit like a slap. But Tom suggested I document everything and keep every text, email, letter in case things escalated. He also recommended a mediator, someone who could try to facilitate a conversation with Zachary and Jacqueline. I wasn't sure about that, felt too soft, too passive, but I told him I'd think about it. What I really wanted was to storm into their apartment, demand to see my son, but I knew that would backfire, make me look crazy. push Zachary even further away. Instead, I went practical, started reaching out to anyone who might know what was going on. I called Zachary's old boss, a woman named Linda, who'd always liked me. She was surprised to hear from me, said Zachary had quit his job 2 months ago right after the wedding. Quit. He loved that job, had been talking about a promotion just weeks before. Linda said he'd given no real reason, just said he was starting fresh. I asked if she'd seen Jacqueline around. She paused, then said, "She came by the office a few times, always hovering like she didn't want him talking to anyone too long." That image stuck with me, Jacqueline hovering, controlling, watching. I thanked Linda, hung up my mind, racing with new questions. Why would he quit? Was she pushing him to isolate from everyone? Not just me. I kept digging, called his cousin Emily, who lived in Phoenix. Emily hadn't heard from Zachary in months, either. Said the last time they talked, he sounded off like he was distracted or nervous. She mentioned Jacqueline had been texting her too, asking her to give them space as a couple. And space. From his family, I told Emily about the blocked number and the deleted photos. She was furious, said it sounded like Jacqueline was trying to cut everyone out. Emily promised to try reaching out to Zachary, see if she could get through, said she'd let me know if she heard anything. I felt a flicker of hope, like maybe I wasn't alone in this fight, but it didn't last long. 2 days later, Emily called back, said her texts to Zachary weren't delivering either. Another blocked number. That's when I decided to go bigger. I found a private investigator online, a guy named Paul, based in Tucson. He was expensive, $500 up front, plus hourly fees, but I didn't care. I'd been saving for a new car, but this was more important. I met Paul at a coffee shop, handed over everything I had: Zachary's last known address, his old work info, Jacqueline's social media profiles. Paul was all business, said he'd start by tracking their movements, see if he could confirm Zachary was okay. He warned me it could take weeks, said sometimes these cases were just family drama and the kid would come around on their own. I told him this wasn't drama. This was my son being taken from me. He nodded, didn't argue, said he'd get to work. While Paul was digging, I kept pushing on my own. I went back to Jacqueline's social media, saw she'd posted again. This time, a photo of her and Zachary at some fancy restaurant, captioned, "Living our best life." I zoomed in on Zachary's face. His smile didn't reach. His eyes looked forced, like he was posing for her, not for himself. I saved the photo, sent it to Paul, asked if he could figure out where it was taken. I also started commenting on her posts. Nothing aggressive, just things like "Miss you, Zachary. Call me when you can." She deleted everyone within minutes, blocked me from her account. That only fueled my fire, made me more determined to get through to him. I decided to try. Another angle: reached out to Zachary's high school friend Nate, who'd moved to Phoenix, but still kept in touch with some of their old group. Nate was shocked when I told him what was happening. Said he'd tried calling Zachary a month ago, got the same not in service message. He said Jacqueline had always given him bad vibes, told a story about how she'd once snapped at him for joking with Zachary at a barbecue, said it was disrespectful to their relationship. Nate promised to ask around, see if anyone else had heard from. Zachary said he'd even drive to Tucson if I needed backup. I thanked him, told him to keep me posted. Felt a little stronger knowing I had another ally. A week later, Paul called with an update. He'd tracked Zachary and Jacqueline to a new address, a house they were renting on the outskirts of Tucson. He'd seen Zachary leave for work. A new job at some tech startup confirmed he was physically okay. That was a relief, but it didn't explain why he was shutting me out. Paul said Jacqueline was home most days, didn't seem to work, spent a lot of time on her phone. He also found something else. Jacqueline had a history of short, intense relationships, guys who'd cut contact with their families, only to break up with her a year or two later. It wasn't hard proof, but it was enough to make my skin crawl. Was this her pattern? Was Zachary just her latest project? I asked Paul to keep watching, see if he could get close enough to talk to Zachary without Jacqueline around. He said he'd try, but it wouldn't be easy. Jacqueline was always nearby, like she knew someone might interfere. I didn't care about the cost anymore, told him to do whatever it took. Meanwhile, I kept trying to reach Zachary, sent letters to the new address, emailed his work address, even messaged his old college friends on social media. Most didn't respond, but one, a girl named Sarah, said she'd run into Zachary at a grocery store a month ago. He'd seemed quiet, barely said hi, rushed off when Jacqueline called his name. Sarah said it felt weird, like he wasn't himself. She promised to let me know if she saw him again. I also tried a different approach. Went to the tech startup, where Paul said Zachary was working. I didn't go inside, didn't want to embarrass him, but I left a note with the receptionist, asked her to give it to Zachary. The note was simple. Zachary, I love you. I'm here when you're ready to talk. Mama. I don't know if he ever got it. The receptionist looked skeptical, said she'd pass it along, but I didn't hear back. I kept going though, sent another letter to the new address, this time with a photo of us from his graduation, hoping it would spark something, remind him of who we were. All this time, the anger was building not just at Jacqueline, but at Zachary too. I loved him more than anything, but how could he do this? How could he let her erase me, erase our family? I started having these moments where I'd imagine confronting him, yelling at him, demanding to know why he'd turned his back on me. But then I'd think about his face, that forced smile in the photo, and I'd wonder if he was trapped, if he needed help, and just didn't know how to ask. That thought kept me going, pushed me to keep fighting, even when it felt hopeless. Then Nate called, said he'd heard from another friend who'd seen Zachary at a bar in Tucson a week ago. Zachary had been alone for once, no Jacqueline in sight, but he'd looked rough, tired, like he wasn't sleeping. The friend tried to talk to him, but Zachary brushed him off, said he was fine, just needed to get home. Nate said it didn't sound like the Zachary he knew, offered to come down and help me figure out a plan. I told him to hold off for now, but his call gave me a new idea. Maybe I could catch Zachary somewhere public, somewhere Jacqueline wouldn't be watching. I asked Paul to track Zachary's routine, see if he went anywhere regularly without her. Paul spent a few days following him, said Zachary went to a coffee shop every morning before work, always alone, stayed for about 20 minutes. I decided to take a chance, drove to the coffee shop the next morning, my heart racing as I parked across the street. I saw him walk in, sat at a corner table with a laptop, looking more like himself than in that restaurant photo. I waited a few minutes, then went inside, sat at a table nearby. I didn't approach him right away, just watched. He didn't notice me, kept typing, sipping his coffee, looking lost in thought. I walked over, finally said Zachary soft enough not to startle him. He looked up, eyes wide, like he'd seen a ghost. Mama, he said, voice barely there, and for a second I thought he'd hug me, but he didn't move, just stared. I told him I wasn't here to fight, just wanted to know he was okay. Said I'd been trying to reach him for months. He looked down at his coffee, said, "It's complicated." I asked what that meant, begged him to talk to me. He said Jacqueline had been handling things, said he didn't know. I'd been calling. I didn't know about the letters. My heart sank, but I kept calm, asked if he was happy, if this was what he wanted. He didn't answer, just said he had to go, promised he'd call me soon. I gave him my number again, watched him leave, feeling like I'd gotten closer, but still so far away. Paul called later that day, said he'd seen Jacqueline pick Zachary up from work right after the coffee shop, looked like they were arguing in the car. I didn't know what to make of it, but it gave me hope. Maybe Zachary was starting to question things. I kept pushing, sent another letter, this time to his work address, hoped it would get past Jacqueline. I also called Emily again, asked her to come to Tucson, said I might need her help soon. She agreed, said she'd drive down that weekend. I felt like I was building an army, small, but determined to get my son back. Then came the moment I thought was a breakthrough. Paul called, said he'd caught Zachary alone at a gas station. He approached him casually, said he was an old family friend, asked how Zachary was doing. Zachary was polite, but guarded, said he was fine, just busy with work. Paul mentioned me, said, I was worried. Zachary's face changed for a split second, like he was about to say something, but then he shut down, said he had to go. Paul slipped him a note with my number, said, Your mom just wants to talk. Zachary took it, but didn't say anything else. Got in his car and left. I waited for days, prayed he'd call, but nothing. Paul said he'd keep trying, but I could tell he was starting to think this was a lost cause. That's when I decided to write the letter, the one I'd been avoiding, the one that felt like giving up. I sat down at my kitchen table, poured everything into it, told Zachary I loved him, that I'd always be here, but that I couldn't keep chasing him if he didn't want me in his life. I wrote about our memories, the way he'd light up when we'd bake cookies together, how he'd call me his hero when I'd stay up late, helping with his homework. I told him I didn't understand what was happening, but I respected his choice, even if it broke me. I mailed it to the new address, marked it for his eyes, only prayed it would reach him. That letter was my last hope, my way of saying goodbye. If it came to that, 2 weeks after I sent the letter, I got a call from an unknown number. My heart leapt, thinking it was Zachary. I answered, voice shaking, but it was Paul. He'd been following Jacqueline, saw her throw out a stack of mail, including an envelope that looked like mine unopened. My stomach dropped. She was intercepting my letters, keeping them from Zachary. I told Paul to get that envelope if he could. He said he'd try, but it was risky digging through someone's trash. I didn't care. Told him I'd pay whatever it took. That night, I couldn't sleep. Kept imagining Jacqueline tossing my words, my heart into the garbage like it was nothing. The anger was back stronger than ever, but now it was focused razor sharp on her. Paul called the next day, said he'd gotten the envelope. It was definitely mine, still sealed. He dropped it off at my house, and when I held, it felt like holding a piece of my soul. I didn't know what to do with it. Part of me wanted to drive to their house, shove it in Zachary's hands, but I knew that wouldn't work. Instead, I decided to deliver it myself in person. No more mail. No more chances for her to interfere. I called Paul, asked him to let me know when Jacqueline was out of the house. He watched their place for 2 days, finally texted me. She's gone. Zachary's home alone. Go now. I drove to their house, my hands steady for the first time in weeks. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding, but my resolve solid. Zachary opened it, and for a moment we just stared at each other. He looked tired, eyes sunken like he hadn't been sleeping. "Mama," he said, voice soft, and that one word nearly broke me. I held up the letter, told him I needed to talk, that I wasn't leaving, until he heard me out. He hesitated, glanced over his shoulder, like he was checking for her, then let me in. The house was pristine, everything in its place, but it felt cold, like no one really lived there. I handed him the letter, told him to read it, right then, said I'd wait. He sat on the couch, opened the envelope, his hands shaking just enough for me to notice. I watched his face as he read, saw his eyes fill with tears, saw his jaw tighten. When he finished, he looked up at me, voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know you were trying to reach me." Those words hit like a wave, relief and rage all at once. I asked what he meant, he said. Jacqueline had changed his phone number, told him it was for a fresh start, said she'd handle all the family stuff so he could focus on work. He didn't know I'd been calling, didn't know about the letters, didn't even know his number was blocked. I told him everything, the deleted photos, the social media posts, the way she'd brushed me off at their apartment. His face changed, got harder, like he was waking up to something he'd been ignoring. He said Jacqueline had been protective lately, didn't like him talking to anyone from his old life, said it was about building their future together. I wanted to scream, wanted to shake him, and ask how he could let her do this. But I stayed calm, told him I loved him, that I wasn't here to fight, just to make sure he was okay. He nodded, said he needed time to think, but promised he'd call me soon. I left the house feeling lighter, but still scared like this wasn't over yet. Emily arrived that weekend, stayed at my house, said she wanted to be there for whatever came next. We talked late into the night. She told me stories about Jacqueline's behavior at family gatherings, how she'd always seemed to pull Zachary away from everyone. Emily said she'd tried to warn him once, but he'd brushed it off, said Jacqueline was just intense. Hearing that made me realize how deep this went, how long Jacqueline had been working to isolate him. Emily and I made a plan to keep reaching out to Zachary, send him messages through any channel we could find, remind him he had a family who loved him. 2 days after my visit, Jacqueline called me, her voice ice cold. You had no right to come to our house, Cheryl. You're crossing lines. I didn't hold back. Told her I knew she'd been hiding my letters, blocking my calls, erasing me from Zachary's life. She laughed sharp and mean, said I was obsessed that Zachary didn't need me anymore, that he was her family now. I told her she couldn't keep him from me, that I'd fight for him, no matter what. She hung up, but not before saying, "You'll regret this." I didn't know what she meant, but it sent a chill through me. Zachary called that night, said he'd confronted Jacqueline about the letters, the phone number, everything. She'd admitted to some of it, said she was protecting him from stress, but he didn't buy it. He sounded angry, but also torn, like he was caught between loving her and seeing her for what she was. He said he needed to figure things out, asked me to give him a little time, but promised he wouldn't disappear again. I told him I'd wait as long as it took, but to please not shut me out. He said I won't, Mama, and I believed him, or at least I wanted to. Paul kept watching their house, said Jacqueline was acting erratic, leaving at odd hours, making calls in her car like she didn't want Zachary to hear. I didn't know what she was planning, but I wasn't going to let her hurt my son. I started preparing for the worst, looked into restraining orders, talked to Tom the lawyer again about what I could do if things got ugly. I also reached out to Nate, told him to be ready in case Zachary needed somewhere to go. The waiting was torture every day, wondering if he'd call, if he'd show up, if Jacqueline would do something to pull him back in. Then Jacqueline escalated, sent me a package, no return address, just a plain box left on my porch. Inside was a USB drive with a note, "He's mine." I didn't want to plug it in, felt like a trap, but Emily convinced me to check it on an old laptop we didn't care about. The drive had videos, short clips of Zachary and Jacqueline together, laughing, kissing, looking happy. But there was something off his smiles, looked forced like in the restaurant photo, and the dates on the files were recent, after he'd promised to call me. I felt sick, wondered if she was taunting me or trying to prove something. I called Paul, gave him the drive, asked him to see if he could trace where it came from. Paul said the package was mailed from a post office near their house, no security footage, but it was enough to make him think Jacqueline was stepping up her game. He suggested I go to the police, file a report for harassment. I took the package, the note, the USB drive, showed them everything. The officer was sympathetic, but said there wasn't enough to act on yet. Suggested I keep documenting everything. I left the station feeling frustrated, but more determined than ever. I wasn't going to let her scare me off. Emily and I decided to try reaching Zachary. Again went to the coffee shop the next morning, hoping to catch him. He wasn't there, but the barista recognized his name, said he'd stopped coming a few days ago. That worried me, made me think Jacqueline was tightening her grip. I called Paul, asked him to double down on watching Zachary. Said I needed to know if he was okay. Paul said he'd seen Zachary at work, but he looked stressed, always checking his phone like he was waiting for something. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to keep pushing. Couldn't let Jacqueline win. Then Zachary texted, "I'm leaving her. Can I come home?" My heart soared, but I was terrified too. Didn't know what Jacqueline would do when she found out. I told him yes, of course, to come right away. He showed up at my house that night, a duffel bag over his shoulder, looking like he hadn't slept in days. He hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, said, "I'm sorry, Mama, I didn't see it." I told him it was okay that he was here now, that we'd figure it out together. But even as I held him, I knew this wasn't the end. Jacqueline wasn't going to let go that easily. Zachary moved back into my house, slept in his old room, the one I'd kept just as he'd left it. For the first few days, it felt like a miracle having him back, hearing his voice in the mornings, seeing him smile again. But he was different, quieter, like he was carrying something heavy. He told me more about what had happened, how Jacqueline had slowly taken over his life, convinced him to quit his job, change his number, delete his old photos. She'd made it seem like love, like she was helping him build a better future, but really, she was cutting him off from everyone who mattered. He said it started small, her getting upset if he talked to me too long, suggesting he didn't need his old friends because he had her. By the time he realized what was happening, he was in too deep, felt like he couldn't leave without losing everything. I listened, didn't push him to talk more than he wanted, but every word made me angrier at her and at myself for not seeing it sooner. I asked if he'd talk to a therapist. He said he wasn't ready, but he'd think about it. I didn't want to smother him, so I gave him space. Let him settle in, but I kept an eye out for any sign of Jacqueline. Paul was still watching her. Said she'd been quiet since Zachary left, no more erratic behavior, just staying in the house alone. That worried me, more than if she'd been raging, made me think she was planning something. A week after Zachary moved in, Jacqueline showed up at my house unannounced, banging on the door like she owned the place. I opened it, told her to leave, but she pushed past me into the living room, yelling for Zachary. He came out of his room, face pale, but he stood his ground, told her it was over, that he needed to be with his family. She laughed that same mean laugh from the phone call, said, "You think you can just walk away? You're nothing without me." I stepped between them, told her to get out, or I'd call the police. She glared at me, eyes like daggers, but she slammed the door so hard, the windows rattled. Zachary was shaken, said he hadn't expected her to show up like that. I asked if he was okay. He nodded, but I could see the fear in his eyes. I called Tom. The lawyer told him what happened. He said we could file for a restraining order if she came back. I also called Paul, asked him to keep watching her, said I didn't trust her to stay away. Paul said he'd seen her talking to some guy outside her house. Someone he didn't recognize, looked like they were arguing. I didn't know what that meant, but it didn't feel good. The next few weeks were tense. Zachary started looking for a new job, said he wanted to get back on his feet. I helped him update his resume, drove him to interviews, tried to keep things normal. But Jacqueline wasn't done. She started texting him, long messages begging him to come back, saying she'd changed, that she loved him. When he didn't respond, she switched to threats, said she'd ruin his reputation, tell everyone he'd abandoned her. Zachary showed me the texts, his hands shaking, said he didn't know what to do. I told him to block her number, save the messages, in case we needed them for the lawyer. He did, but I could see it was wearing him down. Then came the package. It showed up on my porch. No return address, just a small box with Zachary's name on it. I didn't want to open. It felt like a trap, but Zachary insisted, said he needed to know what she was up to. Inside were photos, not the wedding ones, but old ones of him and Jacqueline, from early in their relationship. There was a note, "You can't erase me." Zachary's face went white. He threw the box across the room, said he couldn't deal with this anymore. I called Paul, told him about the package. He said he'd look into it, see if he could prove Jacqueline sent it. Tom said it might be enough for a restraining order, but we'd need more evidence. I started feeling like we were under siege. Every noise outside made me jump. Every unknown number on my phone felt like a threat. Zachary was trying to hold it together, but I could see he was struggling, didn't want to leave the house, didn't want to talk to anyone but me. I pushed him to see a therapist again, said it might help him process everything. He finally agreed, found someone online who did virtual sessions. I didn't ask what they talked about, gave him privacy, but I noticed he seemed a little lighter after the first session, like maybe he was starting to find his way back. Then Jacqueline escalated again. Paul called, said he'd seen her outside my house late at night, just sitting in her car watching. I told Zachary he was furious, said he was going to confront her, but I stopped him, said we needed to be smart about this. I called the police, filed a report about her stalking, got them to patrol the neighborhood more often. Tom filed for the restraining order, attached the texts, the package, the police report, everything we had. A judge granted it 2 days later, said Jacqueline couldn't come within 500 feet of me or Zachary. I thought that would be the end of it, thought we'd finally won. But Jacqueline didn't stop. She started posting on social media again, cryptic messages about betrayal and fighting for what's mine. I showed them to Tom. He said they were vague, but we should keep them in case she violated the order. Zachary was rattled, said he felt like she was everywhere, even when she wasn't. I tried to keep him focused on moving forward, helped him get ready for a second interview at a tech company he was excited about. He got the job a week later, said it felt like a fresh start. I was so proud. Watched him leave for his first day in a new suit, looking more like himself than he had in months. Then came another scare. Emily was over for dinner one night, when Zachary got a call from a blocked number. He didn't answer, but they left a voicemail, just heavy breathing. No words. We all looked at each other, knew it was her. I called Paul. He said Jacqueline had been spotted at a bar in Tucson the night before talking to some guy who looked like trouble. I didn't know what she was planning, but I wasn't taking chances. I installed a security system at the house. Cameras, motion, lights, the works. Zachary said I was overreacting, but I could see he was nervous too, kept checking the windows at night. A few days later, Paul called with a lead. He tracked the guy Jacqueline was seen with, found out he was an ex-boyfriend, someone she dated years ago who'd had his own run-ins with the law. Paul said they'd been meeting regularly, looked like she was trying to pull him into whatever she was planning. I told Tom. He said we needed to get this to the police, see if they could question the guy. I also told Zachary, kept him in the loop, said we had to stay one step ahead of her. He nodded, said he just wanted it to be over, wanted to move on. I promised him we'd get there, but we had to be careful. The police questioned Jacqueline's ex, but he didn't give them much, said he was just catching up with her. I didn't buy it. Neither did Paul. He kept watching her, said she was spending a lot of time at a storage unit on the edge of town, going in with bags coming out empty. I didn't know what she was hiding, but it made my skin crawl. I told Zachary to stay away from her, no matter what. Said we'd let the police handle it. He agreed, but I could see the toll it was taking the way. He'd flinch at every notification on his phone. The restraining order seemed to work for a while. No more texts, no more packages, no more late-night visits. Zachary settled into his new job, said he felt like he was getting his life back. I was proud, but still cautious, kept in touch with Paul, asked him to let me know if Jacqueline did anything suspicious. He said she'd moved out of the rental house, no forwarding address, but he'd heard she was staying with a friend in Phoenix. I hoped that meant she was moving on, but I didn't trust. It didn't believe she'd give up so easily. 3 months after the restraining order, Zachary got a call from an unknown number. He didn't answer, but they left a voicemail. It was Jacqueline crying, saying she was sorry that she'd made mistakes, but she still loved him. He played it for me, his face torn between anger and guilt. I told him not to respond, that she was just trying to pull him back in. He agreed, deleted the voicemail, blocked the number, but I could see it shook him, brought back all the fear and doubt he'd been trying to move past. I called Tom, told him about the voicemail. He said it violated the restraining order, filed a report with the police. A week later, Jacqueline was arrested. Paul had tracked her down, found her staying at a motel in Tucson. The police picked her up for violating the restraining order, said she'd admitted to the voicemail, claimed she just wanted closure. I didn't buy it, neither did Zachary. He was done with her, said he didn't want to hear her name again. The court sentenced her to 6 months probation, ordered her to stay away from us permanently. It felt like a victory, but it didn't erase the damage she'd done, didn't bring back the year we'd lost. Zachary kept going. To therapy, started opening up more, told me he felt like he'd been brainwashed, like Jacqueline had gotten inside his head and twisted everything. He said he was ashamed of how he'd let her control him, how he'd hurt me without even realizing it. I told him it wasn't his fault, that she'd manipulated him, that all that mattered was he was here now. We started rebuilding. Our relationship slowly took walks together, cooked dinners, laughed like we used to. It wasn't the same as before, but it was enough. It was ours. But Jacqueline wasn't completely gone. Paul called a month after her arrest, said she'd been seen back in Tucson hanging around the same storage unit. I didn't know what she was up to, but I wasn't taking chances. I told the police. They said they'd look into it, but without a direct violation of the restraining order, there wasn't much they could do. I called Tom. He suggested we hire a second investigator to work with Paul, get more eyes on her. I agreed, paid another $1,000 to bring in a woman named Carla, who specialized in tracking digital footprints. Carla found something Paul hadn't. Jacqueline had been using a fake social media account to watch Zachary's new job, posting about his promotion, congratulating him in the comments under a different name. It was subtle, but it was her. I showed Zachary the account. He was furious, said he couldn't believe she was still out there watching him. I told him we'd handle it, said Carla was digging into her online activity, seeing if she'd left any other traces. Carla found more emails Jacqueline had sent to Zachary's new coworkers, pretending to be an old friend asking about him. It was creepy. Made my skin crawl to think how far she'd go. Tom said, "We could use this to extend the restraining order, maybe even get her charged with stalking." We filed another report, gave the police everything Carla found. The police raided Jacqueline's storage unit a week later, found boxes of photos, letters, even some of Zachary's old clothes. It was like she'd been building a shrine to him, or maybe planning something worse. They also found notes letters she'd written, but never sent, full of rage, calling Zachary a traitor, saying she'd make him pay. The police arrested her again, this time for stalking and harassment. She was sentenced to a year in jail, no chance of probation. When I heard the news, I felt a weight lift, not just for me, but for Zachary. He didn't say much. When I told him, just nodded, said good, and went to his room. I knew he needed time to process it all. Zachary started to heal. After that, threw himself into his job, made new friends, even started talking about moving out, getting his own place. I was proud, but scared too, didn't want to lose him again. He saw it in my face one night over dinner, said, "Mama, I'm not going anywhere." Not like before. Those words meant everything, gave me the strength to let him go. Not as my little boy, but as the man he was becoming. We kept our routines, the walks, the dinners, the little moments that reminded us who we were. I sold the house in Tucson a year later, used the money to buy a smaller place closer to Zachary's new job. We didn't talk about Jacqueline anymore. Didn't need to. She was gone, not just from our lives, but from our minds. Zachary started dating again, nothing serious, just casual, said he wasn't ready for anything big, but he was happy. I watched him grow back into himself, saw the light in his eyes return, and it felt like a gift, like we'd been given a second chance. Emily came to visit. One weekend, brought her new boyfriend, said she wanted us to be a family again. We had a barbecue in the backyard, laughed until our sides hurt. Zachary was there joking with Emily like they were kids again, and for the first time in years, I felt whole. I thought about all we'd been through, the fear, the anger, the nights I thought I'd lost him forever. But we made it, not unbroken, not perfect, but together. If you're watching this and you're going through something similar, don't give up. Fight for the people you love, even when it feels impossible. They're worth it, and so are you. Keep pushing, keep loving, keep believing, you'll get through it. We did, and I know you can too. If this story hit you, check out the next one on your screen. Click subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming. Thanks for being here.